Hola nuevamente, bienvenidos a su podcast Real Estate of Mind. Thank you for joining us today, and please let me introduce you with our guest today. It's an interesting lawyer, raised and born in Puerto Vallarta. His name is Orlando. How are you, Orlando?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I know you have like a very busy agenda, but I think the information we're going to share today for our community is going to be very useful, especially in terms of buying and selling a property.
Okay.
So, Orlando, I know you are in charge of closing transactions, right?
Yes.
And how come you decided to work in this field?
Well, I first was I was studying law a long time ago. I was working for the prosecutor office here in Puerto Vallarta, but then I was like, this is not for me. So I decided to study another career. I went to business school, and I was like, okay. I finished my business career, and then I went to Mexico City. I live in several cities. I decided to come back to Puerto Vallarta, and then I was in a dinner party one time, invited by friends, and I met a lawyer. Her name was Maria O'Connor, and she would start asking me questions about like, what are you doing? So I told her, I almost became a lawyer, and she was like, what do you mean almost became a lawyer? I said, I dropped my law school because I get so fed up with the corruption and everything about in this country, and I didn't want it to be a lawyer. So last semester of school, I dropped it, and I just didn't want to know anything about it anymore. And so she kind of said, well, maybe because you were not in the correct practicing the correct law. And I was like, that actually got my attention. I'm like, what do you mean? She introduced me to real estate law, and she said, come to see me at my office tomorrow, and I'll tell you about it. So long story short, I went there. I ended up working for her, being her assistant. And then I going back to school to finish my law degree, to get my law degree. So yeah, I am a certified lawyer. So I decided that it was that I discovered that I liked it. That it has nothing to do with that other horrible side that the law has in our country that I don't like, and it was also much comfortable. I felt much more comfortable with it.
And you are enjoying it.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah, it's kind of thing that I wake up and I like to go to my office. I like to talk to my clients. I like to help people. I like to explain. It feels really good when I explain to my clients. Like a lot of answering their questions, their concerns. Like they have a lot of because a lot of my clients are foreigners, correct? So they feel very. It's their money. We're talking about. They're investing their money. So for some people, it's their life savings. And I feel very responsible for it. I feel I have to explain them what is it that they are doing. Like a part of that is the real estate agents, and then me, I have to explain that what they're getting into. Like answering their questions, concerns, fears, because there is a lot of misconceptions that going around that they read on the internet, things like that.
There is a lot of information on internet, and now that you mention one of the first about people buying or selling a property here, well, mostly buying, it's that since we are in a restricted zone, is how it is called, but it's just the name. The name that is used for that. It's just to mention, or maybe no, the fact that we are in this restricted zone, that's how it's called, is just because the way they need to buy a property is through a bank trust.
That is correct.
Which is something very interesting, something very particular, because it's like the legal vehicle for them to enjoy a property. And I like to talk about it because I think from my experience dealing with clients, there is this misunderstanding that they may feel afraid that if they buy a property through this instrument, someday the government will take it away or things like that.
Okay.
When You tell me.
Well, the probabilities that the government will take it away is the same probability probably as if the world will collapse tomorrow. I mean, it could
Yeah.
happen, but it's very unlikely it will
Yeah.
happen. What I like, usually what I'd like to talk to my clients about it is when explaining the trust is, well, the restricted zone, a lot of them have read about what it is, so they know it's the 50 kilometers from the seashore inland and the 100 kilometers from borders inland, because it's a constitutional prohibition, and which refrains foreigners to acquire direct domain. Unlike Mexicans, we can acquire direct domain, they have to use the trust. But I like also to mention to my clients, because this is a misconception they have, we as Mexicans, we can also acquire the property
Yes.
and put it in a trust.
Yes.
And so for them, I said, I tell them, I said, I have Mexican clients who actually buy properties and put them in a trust. And they say, why? I said, for many reasons. The trust is actually a great contract and a great vehicle to put properties, because the trust is very manageable. So, for example, like, I'm just going to put you an example, okay? So you have 3 properties in Mexico, okay? You don't have any children. You don't have, you have relatives, you have a cousin that you don't like, or you have your mother that you hate, or that you don't really get along with your family, okay? So if you die, and if you don't have the property in a trust, as Mexicans, for example, and if you don't leave a will, then you have to do, you have like my cousin, which I hate when I was alive, will come to the judge and said, hey, my cousin died, I'm his relative, I have
There's
the legal,
the proof, we are
I have the
family.
legal, blah, 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 to initiate a will process, a probate, and they can end up with my property. Somebody, and then if I put that in a will, in a trust, in the contract, I can specify, I want this home to go to this person, which is my personal friend. I want this home to go to this person, which she is my, she was my maid. And so you can manage the trust in a way that you want. So for Mexicans, and a lot of them, it's a really good way to do that, to just make it like easier. Another thing is for security reasons. A lot of rich Mexicans, because every time you do a transaction where you buy real estate, it has to go to what we call the public registry. So public registry so I can use anybody can go to the public registry, type an address, and find out who owns that property, okay? But if I go...
it's public information.
It's public information, that's the way. So if or they can put my name, and they can find out how many properties I have. So, but if they type my name in a computer in the public registry, and my properties are in a trust, nobody will find out how many properties I have, just because if they type my name, the property as a right is not in my name, it's in the bank's name.
Interesting.
I am the beneficiary of that trust. So that being said, when I explain to my clients about the concerns, they usually, well, what about if the bank goes bankrupt tomorrow? I said, well, our law established certain ways that if the bank goes bankrupt, they have to transfer everything that they have in trust to another bank. So think of the bank having 2 bags. I always explain my clients that. This bag is what the bank owns. What the bank, like in the case they go bankrupt, they can use this bag to pay their creditors, their debtors, and, go with the bankrupt effect. This other bag is what they cannot use to do. Like, this bag cannot be touched. So if they go bankrupt, they have to transfer this bag to another bank. And in this bag goes, like things like anything that is in a trust. So that one, they have to send it to another bank. And if the property is in the trust, they will send it to another bank.
Yeah, because let's mention that the property that is held in a bank trust is not part of the bank's asset.
That is correct.
Right?
Yeah, it's not part of the bank assets. The bank doesn't have no authority to do anything with that property. And that's what a lot of people, that misconception, like, if the bank owns my property. No, they don't. It's more complicated than that. Like, they put it, it's a contract where the settler of the trust puts the property into a contract with the bank, but the beneficiary of that contract is the buyer, the person who is buying the property. So they are the ones who are controlling the trust. They can control the trust. They can indicate the bank what to do with that property. They can ask for a loan. They can sell the property. It's like having, you just have to pay a fee to the bank for that.
Yes, and also it's will have the same benefits and obligations as the Mexican citizens. What I'm trying to say is that they will be able to sell their property later, to rent it, like a Mexican citizen, and of course pay the annual property tax like we all pay. Yes, and they can enjoy everything.
Yeah. Same thing. And that's what I tell my clients. Our legislation will not make you feel like you're less of you are not a citizen of Mexico, but you wouldn't, in terms of owning property, you will not be treated differently. The only way that is you are, so the trust is just like a vehicle that allows you to go around that constitutional prohibition. I'm a foreigner. I want my home in Puerto Vallarta, but I cannot put it in my own name. Well, because that you have to use the trust. That's it. But it's just filling out a requirement. That's what I'm going to tell my clients. It's just like filling up a requirement.
Yes, and the bank trust comes with some cost.
Yeah.
Right? Can you tell me about?
Sure. To set up the trust, usually the banks currently, you have to obtain a permit from Foreign Affairs. That is the difference from a Mexican and a foreigner. That's what I usually tell my clients as well. So if me as a Mexican want to create a trust contract, I have to pay only the trust fee. Okay, so I have to pay the trust fee of $450, 400 depends on the bank. They go from 350 to 450, plus the VAT tax. And as a Mexican, that is the only payment I have to make, plus the notary fees, what we call the closing costs, right? As a foreigner, you have to pay a little bit more because the bank has to get a permit from Foreign Affairs. Because why? Why is that? Why is Foreign Affairs involved in this? Because the person who is buying the property is a foreigner. So Foreign Affairs is in charge of checking all the foreign investment in the country. So their money as foreigners, any foreigner, American, Canadian, European, Latin American, from any other country that is not Mexico, is considered foreign investment. So therefore, the bank has to ask for that and it's not a permission per se. A lot of people said, well, then they give you the permit. I said, no, it's just a way.
It's just the name, right?
The way to charge you money, unless, and I have had some clients, that you are flagged in your own country for some reason, then the bank will deny you to create the trust because for some reason I don't know, the fiscal reasons, something they did in their own countries. They usually know. As soon as they tell them, the bank, they said, okay, can we put it in my daughter's name? Sure. That is the only way they could. The Foreign Affairs Office will deny something like that.
But it's important to let them know that this paperwork process
we handle over it.
Exactly. It's not like, oh my God, no, I have to do.
I have clients sometimes like, and I was told I have to create a trust, and I said,
which is true, but
it's true, but you have to worry is you have to fill out what we usually, my clients, the thing that concerns them the most is, and I usually, whenever I have the first encounter with them, either by a mail, either by a phone or in person, I tell them, be prepared to give a lot of information. You're gonna be handing out to us a lot of personal information. So that's what they usually feel very uneasy about it because they have in their own countries like the U.S. or Canada, they have a lot of theft identity. So they usually they don't want to give their social security number. So be prepared that you're gonna be asked for your social security number. If you don't want, my advice is if you don't want to give it on an email, just make a phone call to the person in charge or whoever is collecting your paperwork, give them a phone call, or when you're present there, just fill out the paperwork right there.
Yeah, and that's why clients have this freedom to pick somebody who they can trust.
That is correct.
It's so important because they're gonna provide such a delicate information, and this information needs to be handled by professionals, and it's super confidential, and and especially the social security number. And I would like to I would like you to explain why it's so important that.
Oh, we need. The thing is for anti-laundering money law purposes. For a lot of fiscal laws in our country have changed a lot in the past 3-4 years, and that is the reason why. The reason why is because our government is fighting laundering money, right? So. And 90% of our clients, or 90% of the people buying and selling property, they are common citizens like you and me. They're common people buying and selling property. Still, we're treated like we're criminals. Like that's what I always tell. Like, why do I have to provide this if I'm not a. But I tell people they treat me the same way. To me, they treat me the same way. It's not that they're treating you because you're a foreigner. It's they treat me as a Mexican the same way. They want to have what's my in this case. A tax number, right? As a Mexican, I have to provide my tax number, which is the equivalent of a foreigner having a tax ID, in this case, the Social Security number for Americans, or the fiscal identification number for Canadians. And then other countries have different names, but basically it is that number that allowed the government to identify us. So basically, that we need that, and because in the terms of foreigners is because they're gonna create a bank trust, the bank who is creating the trust is obligated by law to fully identify who is controlling that trust.
Yes.
Specifically because in the old times, a lot of the times, the trust contract was used as a vehicle to launder money because the government didn't care or didn't ask or didn't obligate banks to prove who was controlling that trust.
Exactly.
So people who were doing illegal business were using the trust, putting a lot of things in that trust and controlling it without the government knowing.
Exactly.
As per today, you cannot do that anymore.
Yeah, and I have clients asking, why do I have to give this information? And this is wonderful because with your words, now I can share what's behind what is that for, really?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because also it's the way that Mexico with the United States intercambian, no?
They exchange information. But that's another interesting thing. We have the FATCA agreement. The FATCA agreement basically is an agreement that allows the IRS, the IRS in the U.S., to require information from their citizens. But that's something I also would like to tell the clients, because it's a concern that usually arises when I'm closing, in my closings or with my clients is, will the government will know about this transaction? Will the U.S. government know about the transaction? I always tell them, not if you don't tell them. Why? Okay. Of course they could know, because if their money is coming out of their accounts, the IRS knows that you have a U.S. account, and sooner or later they can know. I mean, if they are the IRS in the U.S. the same way that the SAT in Mexico, SAT is the Mexican IRS, he can have access to bank accounts, so they can find out everything in our bank accounts, right? But the thing is, we don't share that information on a daily basis. For example, like a lot of people think at the moment I sign my deed, the notary will share that information with the IRS. Not true. Like we don't. The FATCA agreement works only in a way that if you are sought after a crime in the U.S., like for example money laundering or terrorism or something like that, they can ask to Mexico under that FATCA agreement. In that moment, information goes very fast. But if you are normal, and I always tell this to my clients, if you're a common criminal, like you're a killer, you're a rapist, or something like that, I say something common. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Like the IRS will require the information to the SAT, to the Mexican government, and it's going to go through a very long process before they can get some information in their side. So they don't get the information that they live, because some of my clients are, and most of them, I don't know their personal life, but most of them are not criminals. They are just regular people. But sometimes they don't want to know the IRS to know their business, like any other citizen. So I consider that a valid question, and I always tell them, no, your information will not be shared with the IRS unless they require the Mexican government to do it. Otherwise, no. And actually, it's a crime to share information. If the notary if the bank shares that information with the IRS, you can sue the bank and the notary for that.
Interesting.
And you can actually make money on it. So when they do it, let me know.
Wonderful. And just going back a little bit with the bank trust, what's approximately the cost for set up the bank trust, and is there an
The difference
annuality?
with the Mexican. Yeah, the $450, the annuity, and then the foreigners, people who is not Mexican citizen, they have to pay the permit from Foreign Affairs, which is about right now it varies, but it goes from like 20,000 pesos to 26,000 pesos, 28,000 pesos some banks. So around $1,700.
Which I just want to be clear, this is one of the concepts that are already included in your
the
closing costs.
Yeah. When you get your, like for example, my office, if you're doing a closing with my office usually send you the closing cost estimate from the notary, and then along with that, we send you a separate document explaining each of the items of the closing costs. Because when my clients get the item, the closing cost, they get a lot of items which are like, what is this? What is this? What is this? So I send a separate spreadsheet explaining, okay, so this, what you see here, number one is this, number two. So our clients usually are very happy with that explanation because they get the explanation of which each of the items.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I know we have a little time with you today. I wanted to invite you again because there are so many topics I want to cover with you. Right now we just talk about bank trust. I want to talk about other topics such as residencies or what's the legal documentation for buying a property. Oh my gosh, so many things.
There are
And
so many things.
experiences, examples like, for example, this, I think it's common, a client who's married with a Mexican citizen, and they say, "Oh, I'm not gonna use the bank trust because my wife is a Mexican citizen." Oh my gosh! So please come back.
Yes, I can come back anytime. It's just like, no, and we can for sure talk about those things.
Yeah.
Because that in particular, I always tell my clients, you do understand you're giving your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or whoever, it's gonna be his or her property. You do know that, right? So a lot of people, they think like, we're gonna put in my wife's name or something. No, it's.
But I love him, Orlando. I love him.
Yeah, we all love him. And then when the problems arise, then they
No, this
it's not
is
that
true
easy.
love.
It's not that easy to get. It's not easy to get out of that. So yeah.
No, I mean it's good to know everything. Just
Yeah, so they people know. As long as people have information, I think the best decisions are taken when you have all the information. So you take your decision based on the information, and then it's your own fault, right? Or your own decision.
So, Orlando, you are now working just for closing. How can I say? ¿Estás ahora nada más enfocándote a cierres inmobiliarios?
Sí. También hacemos we also make contracts. We review contracts for clients, for like a lot of clients. Right now, the market in Puerto Vallarta especially is doing a lot of pre-construction. So a lot of my clients are sending me contracts to do things like, can you review this contract to make sure it's legal? And so that's part of our services.
Wonderful.
We also create companies, like, if we want to create a Mexican company, or they want to do changes in their companies, or the things like that. And then my teams also, I have 3 teams that they do like RFCs. I have another team who do residencies, and we offer
RFC, which is a tax.
The tax Mexican ID.
Mexican
we have a
ID.
team who is in charge of that. So we pretty much cover everything like the person buying a property needs to,
Where we can find you?
We are located actually on the same street on Aquiles Cerdán, and then I can share you my email and all that information.
And the name of your company?
It's Lex 360. So LEX 360. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much,
You're
Orlando. It's been a pleasure. And
it's Aquiles Cerdán 280. Sorry.
Aquiles Cerdán 280.
That's I don't know the number of my office. Sorry.
And that's okay. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Real Estate of Mind, your podcast about real estate in Mexico. And see you in the next episode. Please follow us on social media. This podcast is produced by Explora Bahia and Rebeca Cano Real Estate. And see you on the next episode.